j'ai du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Neil Katyal, let's shine a spotlight on Mr. Durham himself, who likes to shy away from it. But there is some public-facing information about his impulses and instincts in this current regime. And while his reputation in previous investigations was of someone who respected the rule of law, there are some troubling outward signs. One was that as someone running an ongoing investigation, he rapidly responded to DOJ Inspector General Horowitz when there were findings that he said didn't line up with his. Why would somebody do that in the middle of an ongoing investigation?
Yeah, Nicole, I'm not going to speculate on that. I mean, Durham's had a good reputation in the past. He's obviously investigating something now. I mean, you know, and I just have no way of knowing what that is. And I totally distrust Barr's summary of the investigation, just as I distrusted what his summary was of the Mueller report, which Andrew says was 100% wrong. I mean, if one of my students turned in a summary like that of a report, they would have gotten an F. So, you know, I know Barr has insinuated certain things about the Durham report, but we just have no way of knowing whether they're right or not. I think the important point here is the one Andrew and Professor Goodman made in today's paper, which is we're 90 days out, and this Attorney General and this Justice Department has shown in the past and in the present that they're willing to do the president's bidding. What's to stop them from doing the president's bidding 90 days before an election?
And I guess the pattern to notice, again, all we have is what's public-facing, is that Robert Mueller spent 23 months investigating Russian interference in the 2016 election and the president's efforts to obstruct that. Bill Barr spent about, 48 hours lying about and then publicly disseminating a lie about it. Bill Barr has traveled with Mr. Durham. I mean, Bill Barr's pattern is to take whatever Mr. Durham does and lie about it for the president's political purposes. Is there any reassurance or any ability to make sure that doesn't happen again with an investigation that almost perfectly aligns with Donald Trump's political objectives?
None whatsoever. And here's a really good example from last week when Attorney General Barr went and testified, and there was a big cloud hanging over his head. You know, all sorts of people, Republicans and Democrats, like Paul Rosenzweig, who was Ken Starr's deputy on the day that he testified, said, look, there's all these assaults by Barr on the rule of law. And Representative Swalwell got Barr to admit that only one time ever did Barr interfere with sentencing, and that was for Trump's pal, Roger Stone. And when Swalwell then goes and says, hey, this is the same guy that Trump was tweeting about, Roger Stone. He praised Stone for having the guts not to testify against Trump. Barr's answer to that was, oh, I'm not familiar with that tweet, which is ridiculous. That's the tweet that's all over the Mueller report that Barr claims to have read and summarized. And so this is an attorney general, unfortunately, who's willing to play politics and at the expense of the rule of law. And I think, Andrew's exactly right to say if he's done it in the past, if he's done it in the present, what's to stop him from doing it in the future?
And Matt Miller, again, all we have is what's out in the public for us to chew on and try to make sense of. But what Bill Barr has said in the public purview to Congressman Nadler is that I'm part of the cabinet. Of course we talk about the election. Here he is with Congressman Nadler.
Have you, now, yes or no, have you discussed the president's re-election campaign with the president or with any White House official or any surrogate of the president?
Well, I'm not going to get into my discussions with the president.
Well, have you discussed that topic with him, yes or no?
Not in relation to this program.
I didn't ask that. I asked if you discussed that
I'm a member of the cabinet, and there's an election going on. Obviously, the topic comes up.
Yes.
Well, the topic comes up in cabinet meetings and other things. It shouldn't be a surprise.
So as part of those conversations with the president or his people about the re-election campaign, have you ever discussed the current or future deployment of federal law enforcement?
In connection with what?
In connection with what you just said, in connection with your discussions with the president or with other people around him of his re-election campaign, have you discussed the current or future deployment of federal law enforcement?
Well, as I say, I'm not going to get into my discussions with the president, but I've made it clear that I would like to pick the cities based on law enforcement need.
Matt Miller, there is no need to discuss with your cabinet your political campaign. I worked for a president who ran for re-election, and Condi Rice and Steve Hadley were the national security advisors. They learned most of what they knew about the campaign from press coverage. I mean, what do you see when you look at what's public facing, when you look at what Andrew and Ryan have written, and when you just look at the patterns of Bill Barr auditioning for the job he has after Donald Trump publicly stated he wanted Roy Cohn, after humiliating Jeff Sessions for honoring DOJ policy, after writing a 19-page memo that we think Trump may have seen saying a president can't obstruct justice. He somehow ends up with the job over other people that wanted it, people like Chris Christie, who had worked there more recently than Bill Barr. And now the Durham probe hangs over the last 90 days.
If you go all the way back to Barr's confirmation hearing, there's a pattern. He has a tell. He often gets asked a question, the one you just showed is an example, where there's an answer that you expect an attorney general to give. In the confirmation hearing, the answer you expected him to give was that he would recuse himself from the Russia investigation because of his previous writings on the topic, the memo he had written that was seen as an audition for the job. And he didn't give that answer. I think we found out why shortly after. It's because he wanted to interfere in the Mueller probe, and he's wanted to then go back and discredit it afterwards. I think when you see him refuse to rule out releasing a report from John Durham in the last 90 days, or even in the last 60 days, or even in the last 30 days before an election, it's again because he intends to do that. And the thing that worries me is that he has two goals here. One is fairly obvious. One is that he intends to try to smear Joe Biden, not because Joe Biden did anything, but to just try to tar the entire Obama administration by claiming there was this plot to get Donald Trump. By the way, a point that Sally Yates debunked pretty effectively today. But then I also worry that there's a second goal, and that is that if Russia or any other country interferes in the election again, or if Trump is caught soliciting help from a foreign government again, as he has done with Russia and Ukraine and China, that Barr is able to release this report that attacks what happened in 2016 and is able to just put out this fog that says all of these deep staters that have made claims about foreign interference in the past, you can't believe what they said about 2016, and you can't believe what's going on right now. And at a time when you have a politicized AG and a politicized director of national intelligence, I think that would leave the American people really left wondering what they should believe right before they go to the polls.
It is Thursday, the 6th of August of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Oh, I should mention something about the grits. I got a little bit of pushback about how the only proper way to prepare grits. Now, I know I stated an absolute, and when you do that, you're going to get some pushback because some other people have their way of cooking grits. So I still maintain that the only proper way to cook grits is with milk. Not with water, not with stock, but so I'm going to hold to that. You can cook grits in any other fashion that you would like. Okay. All right. That's stated. I mean, come on. I don't want to be like the grit purity police here. And it's not just about taste, but we're talking about texture too. Now, some people maintain that the milk cuts back on the taste of the corn. That might be true. But we're talking about balancing taste here. So, Well, what a day. We have a president who had his campaign. Actually, it wasn't Trump that was suspended or posts taken down by Facebook and Twitter, etc. It was his campaign Twitter account that put out the COVID disinformation. Oh yeah, children are immune. Of course, on the other hand, we heard him say it at that so-called presser that he does where he doesn't have any scientists around because they keep saying the opposite of what he says. And since, he goes by his gut knows the truth more than, the people who have been doing the work. And I'm not just talking people who have studied it. I'm talking about the people who've been doing the work at the highest levels for decades. Trump doesn't respect any of that. He's a spoiled rich boy, I got to tell you, you don't find any austere supplicants contemplating the grace of God at the temple of the prosperity gospel. Nope, everything's gilded in this weird dictator chic, too. Petty dictator chic. God. All right. If we're going to have dictators, could we at least have an enlightened despot? I mean, please. Come on. I mean, so much for representative democracy. I kid, though, because there's a lot more of us than there are of them, and representative democracy means that we get to vote them out. I know it's going to be really hard to de-Nazify, Trumpify, de-Trumpify the population of the United States. That toxic third. And I will maintain there's nothing that you can do. They're always going to be there. All you can do is, throw some baking soda on it, take the acid down a bit, the caustic element, neutralize it some, move it off into a corner where they belong, and let's get back to work and, filling potholes, repairing bridges. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Couldn't we just at least start repairing bridges? No, we have to build some fake wall, because building bridges means we're connected, but a wall separates. Of course, our spoiled rich boy would think like that. All right. I guess when you're never taught to get along and the only thing that you are taught is to stab people in the back on your way up. Of course, he never had to go on the way up. He was already there. So who did he have left? Well, he goes after his siblings in the most weirdly Roman, royal, weird way. That was not just Roman. Royal. Stab him in the back. Kill my siblings. I'm going to the top. Daddy likes me because I'm as ruthless as he is. Oh, my. Okay. I also love the premise that if you're willing to shake hands with someone else that you might even disagree with, that makes you weak. Jesus. Okay. One of the reasons that I played sports and football and all these weird macho things was to sort of put the lie to that premise. I thought rugged individualism meant that you got rugged and you went out there and you promoted individual liberty and due process and equal protection for all. I never held to this premise that the strongest shall survive. The strongest helps others to survive. I know it's noblesse oblige, but come on, we got to start somewhere. Trump was never taught noblesse oblige. Noblesse oblige was considered a weakness. Oh, you want to help your lesses? How about not even looking at them as your lesser? Some people are born into unfortunate circumstances, some are not. Just because Trump was born into the rarities of society, whatever that was. Slumlords? Pimps who made their way up the ladder? Come on, never read a book except Mein Kampf? Please. I have to put up with this BS, and we all do. People have a bunch of money, somehow came into money, they think that they're blessed by God, the prosperity gospel once again. I found out early on that just the accumulation of money is no predicate upon whether you know how to think. You're suddenly not just imbued with the mysteries of the universe and you know it all. You think you do. Okay, I'm ranting here. Am I upset? Yes. We have a lot of... let's just put it this way. Right now we have a lot of Trump signs in town, and is it this week that Biden's going to name his VP? I heard that the AG in New York will be having an announcement, a national announcement. Is she going to be the VP? I don't know. I just wish that they would hurry up and decide so that I can get my Biden and whomever the VP is, get that sign up on my yard. These Trump signs in town do not belie the sentiment of what this nation is. Maybe in this town. Yeah, this town, I don't know, is getting to have a bit of a reputation of being some really ignorant outliers. But I maintain they're just the loudest. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. That sort of attitude. These people are just loud. So yeah, I got taken to task for just reporting the news from the local Sinclair channel. You would think I didn't take it off the Oregonian. The New York Times had it. I mean, even Reuters and the AP had it. About this music venue Barr just a couple of miles up the river in town still has a Rogue River address, even though they say it's Grants Pass. Regardless, this place Jam and Salmon, actually I've always been wanting to go there and stuff. It looked like, I don't know. A lot of bikers, let's just put it that way. I'm not offended by bikers. I get mistaken for being a biker, or used to. Every time I go to Europe, people will go, "Are you a Hells Angel?" What the hell? I look like that? I better soften my image somehow then. Anyway, they got closed down, or not closed down, but their liquor license has been suspended because they had a couple hundred people partying on Saturday with no mask, no social distancing. And I also think that, people were walking off the premises with booze. That alone gets your liquor license suspended. So the mere mention of that in town causes the wingers, and they are wingers, and they're COVID deniers, to go off on me. Of course they would, because I mentioned it. Kill the messenger. But I thought reporting it from the local Sinclair channel would mute somehow their outrage, but no. The mere reporting of it means that I'm, if you don't like it here, move to Chaz. Maybe you like Chaz as a community. Man, I love Rogue River. I just got to tolerate these ignorant neighbors of mine. Jeez. Anyway, reason I played football, reason I decided to hike all the peaks along the Pacific Crest. On a bicycle ride, by the way. And any other number of things. So surfing the big waves. Yeah, there's a certain machismo to doing that. And, so I wanted to put the lie to the wimpy liberal thing. Still doesn't work. If you're a liberal, you don't belong here. The Democrat states are hellholes. The Republican states, they are hellholes. I mean, look at Texas. We're going to have a story that's going to be a little reminder about Texas, this Beirut blast. Now, yeah, I know parts of Texas can be quite lovely. It can be. It's not all arid. Anyway, I don't want to go off too much on Texas. I have relatives from Texas, but, Texas has kind of got a bullseye on them because of a certain philosophy that they have. Especially since Ann Richards was pretty much, put a knee to her throat. Let's put it that way. So, you have problems there. Major problems with environment and just, I don't know, to me, simple land use. Let's go to Arkansas. Yeah, Republican governor. Oh, yeah. Oh, jeez. I guess Trump likes it because they're still around 1906, maybe, in some aspects of society there. Or just even infrastructure. I don't know. So Trump is playing a craven cynical game. We know it. I mean, it doesn't take too much critical thinking skills to recognize it. But the absolute outrage for just mentioning that the local music venue got their liquor license pulled because they didn't follow the rules is enough for the Law and Order crowd to go off on you and threaten your life. Yeah, and a veiled threat. Had one guy goes, "You better not wait. Hope I don't see you in town. I'll expose you for the fraud you are." And then, of course, he makes sure that I know that he has a gun. Because who has the gun always determines what polite conversation is. Is that what it is? I'm sorry, I've been a bouncer before, and I've had to deal with fools with guns. And knives and brass knuckles and any other number of stupidities that come with the job. Let's just say that I don't have to shirk and compromise my liberal understandings and beliefs because of physical threats. Of course, on the other hand, it didn't serve Alan Berg very well. Look what happened to him. Jeez. So anything could happen, and you got to be prepared. And, when there's light has a certain antiseptic quality, doesn't it? Shine a light on it, and that's what I'm doing. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, at the top, we all know that Bill Barr is an attorney general willing to play politics, but we need to be reminded because the attorney general, by statute, is not supposed to play politics. On the rest of the menu, in a rare disclosure, the State Department revealed Russia is using a well-developed militarized online disinformation operation around the pandemic. Say that real fast. 5 times in a row. Of course, when asked what about hacking into our voting stuff, I don't know. We don't know anything about that. Of course they don't. A lengthy FBI affidavit detailed how multiple GOP groups were involved in Ohio's $60 million fraud scheme. Yeah, multiple GOP groups. And in a sharply worded ruling, a federal judge in Mississippi pleaded with the Supreme Court to overturn qualified immunity. Yeah, the cops get away with everything now. Everything. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where a German neo-Nazi on trial over the murder of a pro-refugee politician admitted to the killing. And the lack of regulations that caused the blast in Beirut echoes the tragedy in West Texas 7 years ago. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. You will then notice the link to our Patreon page, and this is a continuing plea to those of you who are continuous listeners to Netroots Radio, so I apologize for that. But we pay our bills, and the reason we pay our bills is because, well, you're supposed to. And how we pay our bills is with money. Isn't that weird? It's like a rate of exchange. It's almost like a quid pro quo. Anyway, though the bulk of how we continue this endeavor of resistance comes out of our own wallets, we would be unable to do it without you. And because, as Tom will say later on, you are our biggest contributor indeed. So if you could afford the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds to us once a month, even in these times of peril, it allows us to pay our bills because those bills keep increasing. You know, we're not getting evicted, but the rent's going up. Jeez. Anyway, thank you for your generosity. And for those of you who could be generous here in the present and into the future, we can use it. And we are able to spread these dollars on the quantum level. Yeah, we leave no strange quark unturned. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio, and that is taken care of by Tom, and thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of at Justice Putnam on Twitter, and go ahead, follow me there. I post the show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime. Put that up on social media, and you can find the show notes and links. And just as a reminder, the show notes and links are a very important part and integral. It's more than important, it's an integral part of this whole multimedia dimensional endeavor. Where am I? So check those out because that gives you the actual reportage without all the embellishments. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and really wherever podcasts can be found. Even on Deezer. What the hell is Deezer? I see that as people are getting stuff on Deezer. Must be a mobile app, maybe. I don't know. Aren't they all mobile? Anyway, let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Did you know it's Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays? I know grits are not really jambalaya because, this is a little bit of spice, a little bit of, jambalaya, that little bit. And it's not endemic or, to New Orleans. Well, it didn't originate in New Orleans. It's, grits are more towards, the Carolinas. I know. But the best grits I've ever had was in New Orleans. So excuse me, please. Alrighty. Oh, I should also mention that because of my my tete-a-tete with the COVID deniers, the anti-vaxxers, the Trump cultists that rely on Q, I'm sure that I'll be suspended from Facebook again for harassment because I caused them to threaten me. So I'm harassing them, and they had to respond. I guess that's how it works. The algorithm at Facebook is really odd. Anyway, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is Out of the AP by Amanda Seitz. The State Department says Russia is using a well-developed online operation that includes a loose collection of proxy websites to stir up confusion around the coronavirus by amplifying conspiracy theories and misinformation. The disclosure was rare for the Trump administration, which has been cautious about blaming the Kremlin for anything, and for disinformation campaigns in general, especially around the U.S. election. Despite evidence that Russia launched a divisive disinformation operation on social media during the 2016 presidential election, the State Department's report did not examine how, if at all, Russia is waging another online influence campaign in this year's election. Well, we already know they are because the FBI has told us. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo did, however, announce that the U.S. would offer a reward of up to $10 million for information that identifies people working with foreign governments to interfere in the U.S. election through illegal cyber activity. And they're not going to be paying $10 million for disinformation about Joe Biden. Please. They're going to go after anybody that said, that Trump, is not who he says he is. And they'll call that a disinformation campaign. And there you go. The department detailed a Russian-backed misinformation cycle that spreads false information online through state officials and state-funded media reports. I'm looking at you, Rod Johnson. By infiltrating U.S. social media conversation and leveraging a deceptive internet framework of websites, the Kremlin's efforts have most recently focused on conspiracy theories around the pandemic, and boy, do I get a lot of those. You know, this is what's so bad. There's so many useful idiots. You know, if they would just, I don't understand. They adhere so resolutely to the prosperity gospel. You'd think they would want to get paid. No. I call them socialists. Man, they're doing it for free. My God. Russia is playing a significant role in creating and spreading misinformation and propaganda around many topics, said Leah Gabrielle, head of the State Department's Global Engagement Center. Wow. The department named more than a half dozen websites that, serving as proxies for Russia, have peddled a series of conspiracy theories about the pandemic that have been widely spreading and hotly debated across social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and amplified by the President of the United States. In this reporter's opinion, but it's not an opinion because he does it. He does it. Facebook and Twitter had to take down this BS that children are immune. Idiot. That is dangerous talk. The online news outlets appear independent from the Russian government, but in reality serve as a connective tissue between the Kremlin and state-funded media that often promote the same misinformation from their own channels, Gabrielle said. That's what makes them effective. It's difficult for the average person online, she said, to look at these sites and know the Russian affiliation. The websites the State Department identified have promoted unsupported conspiracy theories that allege COVID-19 was created in a lab as a bioweapon. Billionaire Bill Gates is plotting to use the pandemic as an excuse to microchip people, and that plans for a coronavirus vaccine are simply a ploy for pharmaceutical companies to make money. Now, this is why disinformation, this is not misinformation, this is disinformation. Let's be clear. This is why it is so effective. Because though there is no evidence to back up these claims, to a certain uncritical thinking mind, they just seem to be right. Mark Gillespie of the AP brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A lengthy FBI agent affidavit detailing an alleged $60 million corruption scheme led by one of Ohio's most powerful elected officials provides painstaking detail about groups and individuals who played roles in spending mostly corporate cash. Only one of those groups is specifically named Generation Now, a purported slush fund controlled by since-ousted Republican House Speaker Larry Householder and his closest political advisor Jeffrey Longstreth. Householder, and Longstreth, three other individuals in Generation Now were indicted on federal racketeering charges last week, the same day that Householder's House colleagues removed him as Speaker. Prosecutors allege nearly all of the money spent to get Householder elected Speaker pushed $1 billion corporate bailout through the legislature and fund a dirty tricks campaign to kill an anti-bailout voter referendum touched Generation Now in some way. The $60 million came from what the affidavit and indictment describe as Company A, an obvious reference to First Energy Corp. And its various affiliates. But there are a number of other groups that played key roles that are not identified. Using public records, media reports, and clues in the affidavit, the names of the groups and synopses of the roles they played are coming up, but they're going to be just a quite small synopsis since we only have a certain amount of time, and this is quite detailed. Generation Now, the affidavit and indictment detail how Householder and Longstreth used this dark money group as the main conduit for $60 million in payments to First Energy Corp and affiliates. Company A, Akron-based First Energy Corp, has acknowledged it is Company A that is referenced through the affidavit and indictment. First Energy officials have long been aggressive in differentiating between the corporation and its affiliates, including one that operated 2 Ohio nuke plants. How convenient. Now, another group is just known as PAC. This is the unnamed political action group that helped householder-supported House candidates win primaries in 2018 as part of the alleged scheme to further his aims of being elected House Speaker and getting the bailout legislation approved. Another part of the indictment in the affidavit is known as coalition. Descriptions in the affidavit show this unnamed group is Coalition for Growth and Opportunity, and they're incorporated in Delaware. Well, doesn't everybody incorporate in Delaware? That's how you hide your dark money. Dark Money Group 1 is separate from Generation Now. This is an organization that was used by Householders Enterprise to conceal money on media buys during the 2018 general election, according to the affidavit. Energy Pass-Through is a group described in the affidavit as a nonprofit incorporated in Ohio. And according to the affidavit, its role was to funnel millions of dollars from Company A to Generation Now. Waxter Pettis of the AP brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A federal judge in Mississippi has issued a sharply worded ruling that calls on the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn the principle of qualified immunity, which protects law enforcement officers from being sued for some of their actions, and actually it turns out to be most, if not all. U.S. District Judge Carlton Reeves dismissed a lawsuit that Clarence Jameson, a black resident of Nices, South Carolina, filed against a white Mississippi police officer, Nick McClendon. The lawsuit said McClendon used Jameson's race as a motivating factor for pulling McClendon over in a traffic stop and searching his car. In dismissing the case, Reeves cited court precedents on qualified immunity, but he wrote the principle is shielded officers who violate people's constitutional rights. The Constitution says everyone is entitled to equal protection of the law, even at the hands of law enforcement, Reeves wrote. Over the decades, however, judges have invented a legal doctrine to prevent law enforcement officers from having to face any consequences for wrongdoing. The doctrine is called qualified immunity. In real life, it operates like absolute immunity, he wrote. Reeves, who was African-American, was nominated to the federal bench by President Barack Obama for a district that covers the southern half of Mississippi. Oh, so his ruling doesn't matter then. Okay. Reeves started his Tuesday ruling with a recitation of police harm to African Americans, including the killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Rayshard Brooks, and Sandra Bland. Just as the Supreme Court swept away the mistaken doctrine of separate but equal, so too should it eliminate the doctrine of qualified immunity. Let us waste no time in righting this wrong. The violation of Jameson by this McClendon cop is detailed in full in the show notes and links, so check it out. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Memory loss and forgetfulness are common warning signs for dementia, but a dulling of the senses also appears to be associated with the disease.
Smell is definitely the strongest one we found, but it does seem like it's not just smell.
Willa Brenowitz, an epidemiologist at the University of California, San Francisco. Her team studied cognitive decline in 1,800 adults from the Health, Aging, and Body Composition Study, which tracked the health and mental function of older adults over a 17-year period. During the study, the subjects completed sensory tests, including hearing, smell, touch, and vision. Brenowitz's team took the results of those tests and then compared the adults' overall sensory abilities to their mental function. And the results?
Those with better function had a lower risk of dementia, and with worse multiple sensory function, they had higher risk of dementia.
A decline in smell in particular had the strongest link to dementia. The results are in the Journal of the Alzheimer's Association, Alzheimer's and Dementia. The scientists were just studying correlations here, but Brenowitz says if they can figure out how well multisensory decline predicts dementia risk, it might give doctors another tool to screen for the disease. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1835. That was the day that began the Baltimore Bank Riot. The Bank of Maryland had failed in 1834. Thousands of people who had deposited money in the bank saw their savings vanish. For nearly a year and a half, the depositors wanted their money to be returned. Anger grew. Some of that anger was directed at one of the bank's directors, Reverdy E. Johnson. The bank directors were accused of fraud and speculation that had caused the bank's failure. The bank officials were also dragging their feet on settling accounts with bank clients because the directors wanted to keep their personal fortunes. A crowd gathered around Director Johnson's house and broke out some windows. The mayor of Baltimore ordered a troop of 30 armed guards to protect Johnson's residence. The next day, the angry mob turned their attention to another director, John Glenn. They began to demolish his home before the mounted guards stopped the damage. 2 days later, the mob returned to Director Johnson's home. This time, they were able to overpower the guards. They piled up Johnson's property in the street and set it on fire. The crowd swelled and moved on to destroy property of other bank directors. Revolutionary War veteran Sam Smith organized a militia of 3,000 men to stop the destruction. The leaders of the bank protest were arrested and jailed. The bank directors received $100,000 from the state as compensation for the destruction of their property. The bankers were not held responsible for their actions, which caused the bank to fail. Does this sound familiar? Most of the bankers who caused the 2008 crash also never faced consequences.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Dr. Anthony Fauci on Wednesday said it's possible the virus never truly goes away, and the world will just get better at managing it with vaccines. Public health methods like mask wearing will also help, and more places around the world are mandating them to contain surges. So face masks are now required in all public spaces in Greece, Portugal's Madeira Islands, and Hong Kong. Here at home, Mississippi just instituted a mask policy too, making them mandatory in schools and public gatherings. Mississippi now has the 5th highest number of coronavirus cases per capita in the U.S., which overall is closing in on 5 million cases. Meanwhile, a new study confirmed that COVID-19 rates are much higher among minority children and those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, highlighting inequities in treatment and prevention. And once again, my state of Florida is making headlines. This time it's because we're now the second state to pass 500,000 COVID-19 infections.
We're number one, damn it!
Well, number 2, actually. We're behind California, but we try harder. Lebanese officials have pointed to a possible cause of the massive explosion that tore through Beirut, 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate. Apparently, this was part of a massive shipment of agricultural fertilizer that had been stored in the port of Beirut without safety precautions for years, despite warnings from local officials. Their official death count currently stands at about 135, but you know those numbers are going to rise in the coming days and weeks. Beirut's governor says about 300,000 people couldn't return to their homes after the blast, and at least half of the city's population now have homes that are, quote, unlivable for the foreseeable future. And the U.S. idiot-in-chief continues to speculate from the podium in the White House briefing room that it still could have been an attack?
It could, how can you say accident? Somebody was, left some terrible explosive type devices and things around. Perhaps it was that. Perhaps it was an attack. I don't think anybody can say right now. We're looking into it very strongly. Right now it's, you have some people think it was an attack and you have some people that think it wasn't.
Oh, please. The New York Times is reporting that New York prosecutors have subpoenaed Deutsche Bank, Donald Trump's primary lender, as part of the Manhattan District Attorney's criminal investigation into Trump's business practices. They also say that Deutsche Bank has already complied. The report also confirmed that the investigation into Trump's business practices is broader than initially believed. A court filing this week suggests that the prosecutors were investigating Trump and his company for possible bank and insurance fraud, citing, quote, public reports of possibly extensive and protracted criminal conduct at the Trump organization, end quote. Now, I have no idea if this story is related or not, but New York Attorney General Letitia James' office on Wednesday announced that she'll make a major national announcement Thursday morning at 11:30 Eastern. The announcement will stream live at ag.ny.gov/livestream. So the White House got dinged on social media Wednesday, Facebook removing a video posted on Trump's page from his appearance on Fox and Friends Wednesday morning, in which he falsely claimed,
"This thing's going away. It will go away like things go away. And my view is that schools should be open. If you look at children are almost, and I would almost say definitely, but almost immune from this disease."
Twitter, too, temporarily restricted the Trump campaign account after it shared a tweet with the same video and false claim, and YouTube took it down, too, saying it violated its coronavirus misinformation policy. The response from Fox and Fiends? Disbelief. It's official. Former Vice President Joe Biden will not appear at the upcoming Democratic National Convention in Milwaukee due to concerns about the coronavirus. Biden will instead accept his party's nomination for president and deliver his speech from Delaware, where he lives. Most of the convention was already scheduled to be virtual due to the outbreak, and delegates were told in June they should prepare for a remote event. Trump, who canceled the Jacksonville portion of the Republican National Convention, said he may give his speech from the White House. Even some Republicans said, "What?" Senator John Thune of South Dakota asking, "Is that even legal?" And by the way, Nancy Pelosi isn't having any of it.
You can't do that. You can't do that. I mean, you would be very surprised, I think, at the fact that when you're at the White House, you're talking about policy and the rest. You're not talking politics. You don't have political events in the Capitol. You don't have political events in the White House.
Former Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee Wednesday that then incoming National Security Advisor Michael Flynn secretly neutered Obama administration policy toward Russia in late 2016. Flynn's actions ahead of the inauguration of Trump helped fuel the investigation into contacts with Russia by Trump associates. Before the hearing, Trump attacked Yates, tweeting that she has zero credibility. Have you looked in a mirror lately? And he accused her of being part of the greatest political crime of the century. And Biden knew everything. The review of the Russia investigation by the committee, chaired by Lindsey Graham, is one of two inquiries being undertaken by the Republican-led Senate committees into the origins.
The oranges of the investigation.
No, the origins of the Russia investigation. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 58 degrees Fahrenheit. We're only going to have a high of around 80. It is surely sweater weather compared to the 105 that we had just days ago. Overnight lows in the low 50s, mostly clear tonight. A mix of clouds and sun today with winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Shifting tonight out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And mainly sunny tomorrow with highs in the upper 80s, winds out of the north at 5 to 10. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County of Southern Oregon, here in Southern Oregon, stands at 421, a marked increase from the beginning of the week, with one confirmed deceased. Grass pollen is moderate right outside the window here at the mothership. The air quality index in the region is good at 26 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is very high at 8. Barometric pressure is holding steady, currently at 29.98 inches. Visibility is down to 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 91%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world like a data swarm, a swarm of data. All right. London is 82 and partly cloudy. Paris is 94 and sunny. Rome is 88 degrees and partly cloudy with a thunderstorm and lightning warning that could knock out electrical infrastructure during a pandemic. Kyiv is 88 and fair. Kabul is 88 and fair. Hong Kong is 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 82 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 54 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 77 degrees Fahrenheit with rain, probably from a hurricane. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at the Agence France Presse, by way of raw story, bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A German neo-Nazi on trial over the murder of pro-refugee politician Walter Lübcke admitted yesterday, Wednesday, to the killing that has shocked the nation and highlighted the growing threat of right-wing extremism. "I fired the shot," Stefan Ernst, age 46, told the court of the killing in a statement read out by his defense. Federal prosecutors have said Ernst was motivated by racism and xenophobia when he shot Lübcke in the head on June 1st of 2019. Lübcke's killing is believed to be Germany's first far-right political assassination since World War II.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Paul J. Weber and Ellen Nickmeyer of the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The staggering videos from the Lebanese capital are grimly familiar to Tommy Muska, thousands of miles away in Texas. A towering blast, a thundering explosion, and shockwaves demolishing buildings with horrifying speed. It is what the mayor of West Texas lived 7 years ago when one of the deadliest fertilizer plant explosions in U.S. history leveled his rural town. Yesterday, Wednesday, Muska also couldn't shake a familiar feeling that yet again, no lessons will be learned. I don't know what people were thinking about storing that stuff, Muska told the AP. He was a volunteer firefighter at the time of the West explosion. The 2013 disaster at the West Fertilizer Company was a fraction of the size of Tuesday's explosion at Beirut's port that authorities say killed at least 135 people so far and wounded about 5,000. Both blasts involved massive stockpiles of ammonium nitrate, a common but highly explosive chemical, and swift allegations that negligence and weak government oversight were to blame. We have an axiom in real estate: live with no regulations, die with no regulations. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know that Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.